Hello, my name is Syndia and today we're talking oil pastels and papers. The first thing to know is that oil pastels are great for any kind of support you want. That is amazing because you can use whatever you have lying around the house to start off with and experiment, and you can also go out and buy the most expensive, beautiful textured papers. It's up to you. One very basic material you could use is a piece of regular cardboard. You could cut up an old box if you wish to, cereal box or anything, and you could draw on this. The first thing you have to know is that those types of cardboards contain all kinds of chemicals and things and acids that will with time tend to make the colors fade or change through the years. If you know this in advance, you'll keep these guys for experimenting, testing the material, and you'll use more quality papers for your more elaborate works of art. One of my favorite support is the good old sketchbook that you can find at the art store, like this book. It's very affordable, it's acid free, and it's also resistant and thick enough to take all the abuse that you could give it with the oil pastel, which involves a lot of rubbing and layering and all those things. If you do decide to go with a sketchbook, I recommend the ones where you could detach the sheets, and also one that allows you to have a flat surface to work on. So here's an example of a drawing I made using a sketchbook. It's a quick drawing of a barn, and here's another, which was a flamenco dancer. I would say that the sketchbook is the more useful and versatile, just because you could carry it with you. There's a bunch of paper and it's affordable. I would start off with that. I would avoid anything that is too thin because oil pastel is a more heavy material. It's oil, so obviously it would need a thicker kind of paper, and it involves a lot of scraping and rubbing to blend. So the flimsier, thinner papers would not really do well for this. You can use some Bristol paper like this one, which is basically a thick cardboard, acid-free, perfect for all kinds of medium, and it works really well. The only drawback I feel like is it may be a little too smooth, and it lacks the grit and tooth that you may want if you want to build up a lot of different color layers, but that's really up to you. You could still work well with this. If you want some grit, you could always use something like this. It's kind of a canvas / paper hybrid. You may have seen this before. It's very thick. It's meant to be able to take wet paint. It's water resistant, so you'll be able to have good results with this. And I don't know if you could see, but there is some texture to this paper, and I could even give you an example. With the stick, without applying any pressure, you see all the texture of this paper. It's pretty much like canvas, but in a paper form. The good thing about this is that it remains quite affordable, and you can build up your color more than with the regular paper. Keeping in the paper vein, there's also this mi-teinte pastel paper, which is a textured paper, but with different colors. It comes in a pad like this, in different shades of blues and grays and tan and beige. I believe this paper is initially intended for the dry, more chalky, powdery pastels, but it works very well for the oil pastel as well because it has that grit and it's quite thick for a sheet of paper. Let's go on with the canvas type of surface. You can go with raw canvas, meaning not treated with gesso. I don't know if you know what gesso is. This is gesso. The canvas, the stretched canvas that you buy at the craft store is white. It means it's a canvas fabric, raw fabric like this one, covered with some sealant, gesso, to prevent the paints from absorbing too much and going through the fabric, because initially canvas is fabric. With oil pastels, you can, if you want, use some raw canvas without treating it with gesso. and it's gonna give you this kind of effect. It's very much like drawing on a piece of fabric. It's not gonna be a very usual type of support to work with, but it does take the pigment. I mounted this piece of raw canvas on a cardboard just to experiment with. I would personally not strictly use oil pastel on this type of surface. I would probably use this as an interesting textured surface mixed with other mediums. You can certainly achieve an interesting result with it, but it's gonna be an unusual kind of experimenting. You should try it. You can absolutely take a regular canvas. As you apply pressure to draw on this, it will tend to stretch it out and sink in. Also, you'll need to make some kind of wooden block or something to create a hard surface for you to draw on. That's the first aspect. And the second aspect is if you do decide to put an underpainting, like a color of acrylic paint or any other medium, the thicker paint you put as an underpainting, the harder it'll be to build up multiple layers of oil pastel, because the paint will tend to be very smooth and get rid of that gritty texture of the canvas, and that's what you kind of need to hold all the pigments of the oil pastel. So I take acrylic very diluted with water and just put a very thin layer, and this way I keep that nice grit of the canvas. And here we have canvas cardboard hybrid. It's called, what is this called? It's a canvas board. That's what it's called. It's basically giving you the benefit of a canvas, but with already that hard surface to draw on. What I like about the other canvases I showed you before was the nice thick frame and that it was already mounted. This way you don't necessarily need to frame your finished work, as opposed to this one, but it's all a question of personal choice really. Here are other boards that I've treated with different textures, just to give you an idea of what you could do and what you can experiment with, because let's not forget that oil pastels are one of the best materials you can use for mixed media if you want to try a whole bunch of different things on the same canvas. So you can use one of those canvas boards. I've put those cotton bandages rolls, I've cut out some of it and I've stuck them with some matte medium, and I've put a quick stain on it. With this I've actually used tissue paper, again with the matte medium and some paint, and it could serve as a base to use for mixed media collage, to paint with, and to put pastel. Of course, here's the proof. Pastel goes on it. Don't expect a very smooth effect, because that's not the point, but you could see that you can actually use pastel. You can use it to do a contour line, to add some texture, some colors, anything your heart and imagination desires. And here's the work in progress. I'm showing you this just because it is hardboard canvas, as I was saying. It's not finished yet, but as you can see, it's strictly made with oil pastel, and it allows you to build up the color nicely and to use all your tools, the blending tools and the scraper tools, to do all kinds of different effects on your work of art. Canvas boards are a great option for oil pastels because they're very affordable and very convenient. You could also use cheap masonite. If you decide to use masonite or some kind of piece of wood, I suggest that you seal it with gesso or with any other sealant, just to prevent the colors, the pastel from sinking into the wood and then changing colors. That's one thing to keep in mind. And also, especially the gesso is white, so it gives you a nice light surface to start off with, especially if you need some bright colors in your work of art. That's something to keep in mind. And the last thing I want to show you is the mounted wood panels. It's basically like a canvas format with the thick frame here. And the nice thing about this is that it provides you with a hard surface and it doesn't require framing. You could just use this as is to do your drawing with oil pastels or with any other mediums, of course. But at the end, you have a nice work of art already ready to hang on the wall. Here's another example of a work in progress that I've made using this wood panel. It allows you to build up the pastels because there is that texture here. Because it's a hard surface, it allows you to blend everything out very nicely. I would absolutely try the wood panels if I were you, because I think it's a good option. So to summarize, as you can see, and you probably guessed, you can draw on pretty much anything with oil pastels, which is the beauty of them. I've mentioned a lot of options, but there are a bunch of other options that I probably didn't think of. You could have a lot of this material lying around at home. You can experiment with them. If you do want to start somewhere and you're not sure where to start with and you want to take a trip to the art store, I would suggest that you start with maybe a nice sketchbook at an affordable price. I would use the sketchbook to really experiment with and have fun with, and when I'm ready to make a nice beautiful artwork that I'll spend a lot of hours with, I think I would go on a more resistant surface, and I would probably go with canvas board, which are very affordable, or even better in my opinion, those wood panels, because you don't need to frame them. So these are my recommendations. I hope you like it. I hope you keep drawing. I hope I gave you the oil pastel bug. Please let me know how it went for you. You could find me on Instagram as always. Use the hashtag oil pastels. You could subscribe to this channel if you like art and music and film photography, because that's what I love to talk about and I would really like to have you back. And so that's it for me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.